Fun times in Cleveland again. Still Cleveland. Come on down to Cleveland town, everyone. Under construction since 1868. See our river that catches on fire. It's so polluted that all our fish have AIDS. We see the sun almost 3 times a year. This guy has at least 2 DUIs. The flats look like a Scooby-Doo ghost town. Don't slow down in East Cleveland or you'll die. Our economy's based on LeBron James. Buy a house for the price of a VCR. Our main export is crippling depression. We're so retarded that we think this is art. It could be worse though, at least we're not Detroit. We're not Detroit.
We are not Detroit. We are the Friends of Fantasy Benefits Baseball Podcast. And representing Cleveland hard today, I've got 2 Clevelandites. Clevelanders. There we go.
Yeah.
I am Justin Mason. That right there is Dave McDonald. And joining us is a special guest, Tony DiVincenzo. How you doing, Tony?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing, Justin?
I'm doing well. Tony, before we get started, why don't you let people know where you can reach on social media and then talk just a little bit about yourself?
So I can be reached at SPECTRE14, Spectre14 on Twitter. As far as about myself, I grew up in Cleveland, went to high school with Dave. Currently a Cleveland expatriate in Cincinnati right now, but close enough that I can still go up and visit and hang out. But been playing fantasy sports for a really long time, at least since grade school. And obviously just kind of ramped it up over the years, but just spend a ton of time doing it, love talking about it. So always happy to stop by and blabber nonstop for about an hour. So glad to be here.
Good time to be a Browns fan living in Cincy, huh?
Yeah. Oh man, I was at that game. That was my voice is a little shot. I'm hoping it makes it the whole time, but that might have been the best Browns game that I have ever seen in person. So
awesome. Just
nonstop beatdown. Got to talk smack to Bengals fans when they were still in the stadium and they hadn't left in the third quarter. So it was quite the day.
That's awesome.
And we also, of course, have Dave McDonald. Dave can be reached on Twitter at RunDMCD. Don't forget the D. You can reach me on Twitter at Justin Mason. You can reach me at Twitter at Justin Mason FWFB. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing well, my friend. Doing well. After that, like Tony was saying, that Browns beat down of the Bengals yesterday that was pretty fucking sweet. So it was really nice coming off of on the heels of the Odell news, because everybody was like so down on the Browns and thinking that this is going to affect us. Like, we've been watching the Browns since Odell got here. He does not make us better. So we knew that we would be just fine without him. And honestly, better. Because Baker always feels like he has to try to force feed him when he's in, and when he's out, I've noticed he's just a lot better at just finding the open guy and letting it rip, and that's where Baker thrives. So really, it sucks that we didn't get anything out of him, but I'm still happy with it.
You got to be careful talking football. People are going to start asking us football questions again. That'll be.
So long as it's the Browns, we're good.
Yeah.
It didn't stop them from asking football questions when we didn't say a single word about football in the last 2 podcasts. So.
This is true. I did put baseball in the title and the header, so hopefully people will realize that it is baseball. Yesterday was, or this week was the Washington football team's bye week, so I actually have not watched a single down of football this week, which has been pretty nice. If you had told me that the Bengals and Browns game, the stadium had slipped into the ocean, I would have believed you, because I had no idea who won.
The ocean in Cincinnati, Ohio. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
River Ocean. Yeah.
Exactly. We're gonna talk about a bunch of stuff today. Let's start with some news, though. Bregman Alex Bregman has wrist surgery. I'm wondering, Dave, you put in here, does this explain the lack of power this season? So to you, does it explain the lack of power?
Usually wrist injuries for hitters portend to a decrease in power. So Honestly, I think it would definitely help explain a lot of what we saw from Bregman. I think, he's going to be at a massive discount. He's always been a guy I've not been on in the past, but that was simply because I never liked his draft costs because he didn't really give me what I was looking for. But I think the skills are still good. Like, I think he's still going to be like close to 30 home runs ish hitter with a 275, 280 average kind of guy, and especially at third base, you can certainly do worse if he's going at an actually decreased level in the draft where I don't have to spend like a top 4 or 5 round pick on him.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where he goes in drafts. We should have our first NFBC ADP next week, and so I'm sure we will discuss a little bit of that as drafts are starting to roll in and complete over there at NFBC. Tony, what are your thoughts on Bregman? Do you think that this is a bounce back opportunity? Maybe he gets healthy with a surgery, or is this someone you would avoid?
I mean, I think it's an interesting opportunity. I mean, he dealt with it sounds like the wrist thing affected him more toward the end of the season. I mean, it definitely affected him in the playoffs. He couldn't even hit his weight. He dealt with quad issues. I mean, it just seems like he's one of those guys who just was never right the entire year. And so it really does depend on what his price tag is, because I think that you've seen in the past, like, I mean, he's not like the hardest hitter, but he's been able to put up decent enough stats to justify a late round gamble pick on him, assuming that all reports are good, that he looks decent in spring training. But it really just depends on his price tag. Because I mean, if he starts to get some helium because hey, he was a former 2nd round, 3rd round guy, and he starts to get some good reports coming out of spring training, and he gets bumped up lists a little bit, I'm probably out. Just because, I mean, that's generally how I view injuries. I'm trying to avoid as much risk as I can in the early rounds. So really, if he lasts to the late rounds, I'll be interested. If not, then it's going to be tough.
It does also depend. Sorry, Justin. It does also depend on how quickly he's able to come back from this. Like I've heard he might be out right up until spring training. So if that's the case, then that might change perception. You mentioned we're gonna have ADP coming up soon. I just looked at Zach's draft and whole draft that he posted in our DMs, and it looks like he went early 7th round. So I think in the 7th round,
unreasonable.
I'm fine with it there. Did you guys happen to see someone posted a highlight video of Bregman in the playoffs?
He had highlights in the playoffs?
No, it was literally him. Like someone threw the ball. Terrible. Someone threw the ball to dugout, and he hit it with his bat. And it was like that was while he was standing like on dugout steps. That was like his highlight. I laughed for a solid 30 seconds there.
That sounds about right.
that sounds about right. I've never been a real big Bregman guy. I was off on him coming into the season, largely because one, we definitely saw a dip last year, and not that I'm blaming the buzzer or whatever the trash can thing was in Houston, but he does tend to pull a lot of his home runs. And while you can get away with that for a little while, I was afraid that pitchers might start pitching him a little bit differently. I don't know how much I buy that the wrist was an issue this year, because his best month in terms of power was September, where he hit 5 home runs. He didn't hit 5 home runs in any other month this season. I think he could probably be a 290 hitter. I just don't know that it's going to come with a whole bunch of power in the way that we've seen previously with him. Obviously, it could. I mean, but I think, I actually have him way too high in my ranks. I've really got to drop him down. But third base is an absolute mess. I don't know if you guys have looked at third base. After your first 3 or 4, it's like it gets ugly really fast. And so third base is definitely going to be a position I target early on. Probably have a lot of J-Ran shares this year, as I know Dave has already mentioned. He'll be targeting him a lot in the first round as well.
Yeah, I mean, that I'm a Trey Turner guy, but there is so much depth at shortstop. It almost makes more sense to start with J-Ram and then target a shortstop. Even the 4th round, you can still get guys like Story and Tim Anderson and Lindor and Bogart. So yeah, the more I look at it, the more I'm thinking I'm probably going to be wanting to start a lot more with Ram this year.
No, I agree. Michael Conforto, Nick Castellanos, and Marcus Semien all rejected their qualifying offers. I think the only one that really surprises me a little bit is Conforto, considering kind of what he's kind of coming off of. Tony, any thoughts on these guys and potential value if they change locations?
Yeah, I mean it's just so hard to say because you're talking about like obviously Simeon's coming off the monster year. Conforto, I mean it's such a difficult thing to peg now. I mean that's one of the reasons why I usually hold off on most of my research until later because it's hard to evaluate a lot of these guys without their landing spots. I mean Conforto, you would assume that whatever he ends up like whatever team decides to pay him is going to be playing him full time is gonna give him the opportunity. I mean, Castellanos, he's leaving the small park. Like, who knows where he's gonna go? He could end up in a tough situation. So I think it's too early to say. But I can't. It's just hard to see. Like, if Semien leaves, how's he gonna end up in a better lineup? Like, is it gonna be something? He's not. And so, like, really, it's just landing spot will determine a lot about what you think about those guys in terms of the counting stats. And then, like, if they go to you would think they would go to Hitters Park, but it's possible they just chase the money, and then that could ding them further.
Yeah, I think the only one that, I think the only one I'm really, really worried about in terms of like potential landing spot is Semien, because Semien loses that value being in that Toronto lineup in those nice parts that he hit in 2021, and he doesn't have like prodigious power in the way that a guy like Castellanos has, wherever Castellanos goes, his power is going to play. Like, I'm not super worried about him moving out of Cincinnati.
Unless it's back to Detroit or a place like Kansas City, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, but
I mean, if they're going to pay him, I would laugh. But
yeah, neither of those places are paying him. I mean, I guess Detroit could make a move considering all their young pitching. Maybe they think they're going to start contending soon. But
we've heard about them possibly going after Correa, so I don't know.
Which I think would be such a nightmare for him. But
it would be so weird. I don't know why either side would be interested in that. It's strange to me.
Yeah. My feeling is I think Correa ends up in New York with the Yankees. But, I'm not super worried about anybody but Semien. Semien's been going pretty high up in some of these drafts. So, like, I thought maybe he would be a guy that people pump the brakes on a little bit. Does not seem to be that way so far. Conforto's an interesting case, though, because I really don't understand him not taking the qualifying offer. I mean, that's $18 million. I don't know how many places are really going to be willing to give him that kind of money over a long period of time. I mean, maybe he gets $15 million a year for 3 or 4 years, but any park he goes to is going to probably be better than the Mets park. So, in that regards, it's probably, anywhere he lands is probably a good spot for him. But I didn't really understand that move. Dave, what are your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Conforto's the shocker there. I would think that would be an easy move for him to take that offer. Maybe he's not happy in New York. I don't know the whole story. I mean, shit, they can't even sign a GM, so I don't know what they're doing there. Maybe he's just like, all right, this place is a mess. I need to get out of here. Even if I don't get as much money, I'm willing to do that for my career. I think these guys, Castellanos, I love, but obviously Great American Small Park was ideal for him. So going somewhere else, it's probably going to depress his numbers a little bit. It's not that he can't hit the ball out in any park or that he won't be great. I think you'll have to ding him a little bit to go to most other parks. Semien, you do have to keep in mind that the Toronto park is a pitcher's park, so they already aren't going to be playing in Dunedin again this year. So, but I think it's more the lineup, right? Like, that Toronto lineup is just rife with studs everywhere. So, hitting at the top portion of that lineup was just fucking fantasy dream. So, that's what you would really be losing if he signed somewhere else. But yeah, right now, if he goes somewhere else, that's a thing where I wouldn't be probably drafting Semien in the first 3 rounds personally. Like, I'd probably be looking around round 4 before I'd take him.
Even
when
with
he did
second base eligibility.
Yeah, even with second base eligibility, I think. I mean, I don't think it's a bad pick in like round 3, but I think I'd probably be more looking like round 4, just personally, for what I'm looking for.
Okay. Moving on, we've got the Twins buying out Colome's contract, or buying out his option, so he becomes a free agent. Dave, you're kind of the closer guru, right? Who's the next man up in Minnesota?
Well, that's assuming there is one. Minnesota kind of tends to go away from using a closer, like a one-guy closer, for most of their years. But every once in a while, they'll sign someone that has that closer pedigree or whatever. So who knows? Who knows what the Twins are going to do? It's way too early for me to know. It's what's interesting to me is with Colome's kind of closer pedigree, but his skills being not really that great. The question becomes, where will he close? Will he close anywhere next year? So I think it'll be interesting. But I think I'd probably still put my money on him at least being in the running to close somewhere next year, whether it's as a sole closer or like part of a committee.
I mean, I think that's why you bring him in. Is he's got there's some managers who just always want that guy with experience. Colome's closed legitimately everywhere he's been. I mean, even if he hasn't started off with the role, he's found his way into saves, and so it's something where, especially when you're signing a fresh free agent contract, I don't know why he would go somewhere just to be an arm in the pen. So, I mean, I'd expect him to start off as the closer. It's just whether or not he can hold it, because he's notorious for blowing saves here and there, and it just depends on what kind of leash they give him. You would think it would be a decent leash as a free agent.
6 straight seasons of 12-plus saves. I mean, obviously 12 isn't like a full season, but he gets saves everywhere he goes, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, even if the peripherals aren't like elite, he still just gets the job done, and so it's not going to surprise me at all if he ends up starting with a role at least.
I mean, last year was pretty much the only season he has been bad, like at least for quite a while. Like he's been really, really good on the surface. The surface numbers are very, very good. Pretty much his entire career until last year, where those underlying numbers finally came back to haunt him. I could see him ending up in a place like Philadelphia, who notoriously does not have much of an analytics department. A place like Arizona, a place where they see they brought in Joaquin Soria on a pretty team friendly deal to try to give him the job, and that didn't work out well. Maybe they try to double down on a guy like Colome. In terms of Minnesota, I think it's Taylor Rogers. He seems like the likely guy if he's healthy. The question becomes, is he healthy? I don't know that Minnesota is going, fancies themselves competitors anymore. I feel like they took their shot, they missed horribly, and now they're probably going to try to retool a little bit. So I don't know that they bring in any sort of big name guy. They could bring in a guy like Colome, but I don't know that they're going to, bring in anybody that would be like the legit guy. So if you're doing early drafts, I think Taylor Rogers is the guy to throw the dart at.
Okay. I don't know. They've always been hesitant to go with Taylor Rogers as their guy. He could be in the picture. I don't think he'd be their sole closer though. But looking at Colome's numbers from last year, his Sierra was actually better in 2021 than it was in 2019 or 2020. And we saw the strikeouts slip in 2020, but I think that was just a small sample thing because honestly, his 2021 and 2019 look extremely similar. The concerning thing was I think he just had bad luck on BABIP and left on base percentage because he had like a 1.4 whip this year. So we haven't seen him put up a whip like that ever really since. I don't think he's ever put up a whip that bad. I think 1.3 looks like his previous worst. So I would bet on a bounce back. If you're drafting early, I would throw a shot on Alex Colome because you can probably get him for pretty cheap right now, and I think he'll end up, with at least 15, 20 saves. I'd say.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds about right, and he was pretty decent down the stretch too. I mean, you look at his second half numbers. He had a 3.51 ERA and a 1.26 WHIP.
Yep.
So I mean that's much better, after losing the job early on and then try get it back kind of after the trade down for a little bit. He was much better down the stretch, so maybe there is a role for him somewhere. We'll see, and obviously we'll discuss it more when we find out where he's going to land. Speaking of where he's going to land, Craig Kimbrell's option was picked up for I think $15 or $16 million for 2022. The rumors have been that the White Sox will look to trade him to a closer needy team. What are your thoughts on Kimbrell? Do you think he ends up as a closer, Tony?
I think so. I mean, he was so bad as a setup man that I don't think you can justify paying him $16 million unless he's going to be closing for you. And I mean, Hendricks is a lock on that. I mean, even from the moment they traded for Kimbrell, it was just Hendricks and Kimbrell setting up. And he just, the fact that he struggled so badly and the fact that there's a lot of shaky closer situations, it wouldn't surprise me if they said, hey, you know what, we are giving him a ton of money. We paid a lot to get him in a trade. We need to try to recoup some of that. Let's pick this up and see what we can do with him. So throw him out there, see if he looks good, trade him before the season. I mean, I honestly don't know, like, is he a guy who they're going to hold on to and spin at some point, or is he a guy that they try to get rid of early? I don't know, but I just can't see them paying $16 million for a guy who struggled as a setup to have him as a setup man again. Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I mean, maybe they're thinking that they can fix what was wrong last year and that he can be that guy. But I haven't seen it yet, so I can't trust in that.
Dave?
Well, this is a guy who had a 2.26 ERA, 2.23 Sierra, 0.91 WHIP. I mean, he was pretty damn elite last year. 15 K per nine rate, and back to sub 3.5 walk per nine rate, which he hasn't been at since 2017. So, I mean, this is a future Hall of Famer. I think there's going to be plenty of teams in the market for a good closer. You don't think so?
A future Hall of Famer. How many closers are in the Hall of Fame?
I don't know.
Not many. Let me.
Okay.
I could think of like 3.
Place a bet on this one right now.
Yeah. Closers.
No, that's fine. I don't really care about the Hall of Fame. I'm a fantasy guy, so I'm just assuming. But he'll be in the closer Hall of Fame. About that.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Yeah.
But no, someone's going to trade for him and use him as a closer. I have no doubt of that. I mean, and people have been drafting him as such. I mean, he's been going in the first, I think, 4 or 5 rounds in every draft I've seen. So, I mean, his track record was from 2018 to 2020. It looked like his control was completely just going away. But then whatever happened in this last year, he found something. So, there's a little bit of risk downside there with the skills, but he was really, really good this year. So it's hard to bet against him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll end up somewhere. I think there'll be some team that misses out on Raciel Iglesias and wants the proven elite guy in Kimbrell. Whether it's like the aforementioned Phillies would be a good landing spot for him. Even a place like the Dodgers, if Kenley doesn't end up back there, they could be a team that willing to throw $15 million at a 1-year solution. He's going to end up somewhere. I can't imagine that you spend $15 million on a setup man, even for a team that wants to be competing in the way that the White Sox do. I think maybe there is a deal coming for, I don't know, some sort of bat, I would assume, because, I mean, their rotation is stacked. I don't know that they need a ton more. So maybe a second baseman or something like that. But yeah, I assume that they will move him, as the rumors have kind of alluded to.
And I think it'll happen before the season, because I think whoever trades for him wants to. They're going to want a full season of Kimbrell and paying him that money. So, and I don't think the White Sox want to pay that much for a setup man, even for half of the season. So I think they're going to trade him before the season starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of 1-year deals, my boy Andrew Heaney getting paid. I
my
did
God.
not think that this would be like the first major deal of the offseason. He lands a 1-year, $8.5 million deal with my hated Dodgers. So I've got to watch one of my favorite players or one of my favorite pitchers go pitch for my least favorite team. I as soon as this happened, I quote tweeted the tweet from Nick Heyman, with the gif of Charlie Brown attempting to kick the football. Because I know that's what's going to happen to me. Like, I know I'm just going to fall flat on my ass, but I won't be able to stop myself. Thankfully, there'll be no price attached this year. But Dave, what are your thoughts on Andrew Heaney in LA?
I was going to say, how are you a fantasy baseball player and you don't hate this guy? Like, I don't understand how he can be anybody's favorite freaking player. Like, what has he ever done for anybody other than misery and pain?
Destroy
like, how
ratios.
many years? I mean, how many years does he need to prove to you who he is before you believe him? I mean, good luck. That's all I can say.
But
good
that
luck.
K to walk ratio, Dave. That K to walk ratio.
Yeah.
I get sucked in. There's no, like, this is an addiction unlike any other. Like, I mean, I've been able to kick all sorts of addictions, and I somehow cannot kick my Andrew Heaney addiction. And now he goes.
You need help? I mean, I think this is a cry for help. I mean, if I have to come over there and beat the shit out of you until you finally get it out of your system.
You know what'll happen, right? Is I'll refrain this year. I won't draft him in any league, and he'll have a fucking huge breakout season. That's what'll happen.
You can just cut the home runs, right? That's all it is. Just stop giving up 2 per game.
Yeah, just stop that.
It's so easy.
Yeah. we fixed him. Tony, other than that, do you have any thoughts on Heaney? You interested at all?
I mean, is he even going to be in the rotation? Like, I don't know that he's in the rotation. He's going to have to fix that home run problem, or he's just going to keep getting blasted. I mean, the dude shows flashes of being elite, and so he sucks you in. And then even if he gives you a good start, that just gets you confidence to pitch him again, and then he gets rocked. So it's like until he learns to stop giving up those massive. I mean, his strand rate is hot garbage. It's like until he learns to stop giving up those homers, I just can't. Like, I can't bring myself to do it. Now, if you're talking like, if he's going so friggin' late in drafts that you're like, hey, you know what? I can throw a worthless, like, bottom 5 pick on the guy and see if he makes the rotation and see if he looks good, then okay, whatever. But I'm not investing any kind of draft capital there until I actually see it. Like, you can't trust. I mean, you can't trust the guy.
You know who the guy in your league is who's going to profit off of Heaney? It's not going to be the guy who drafts him. It's going to be the guy who picks him up in late July after his 3rd IL stint, and the owner finally gets pissed off and drops him. And you pick him up, and after he has a horrible outing, and then he has like a string of like 3 outings, and then he goes back to being bad again. But the guy who gets those 3 starts, that's the guy who's going to profit.
I mean, in terms, like, right now he's got a rotation spot. Like, I mean, there's no. Yeah. I mean, it kind of depends on what the Dodgers do, right? I mean,
right.
I assume they wouldn't be throwing $8.5 million.
$8.5 million. Yeah.
That was the thing that stunned me, is how much they paid him.
They paid him exactly the same as Robbie Ray got paid last year. Mm-hmm. And the reports are that he's looked at as the guy with the same kind of upside. And I see it. I'm a big, like I said, I'm a big Andrew Heaney guy, and
if they can fix him.
That's the big thing, is if they can fix him. And I don't know if it's going to be as simple as, hey, you need to attack the zone in the same way that's what the main fix was for Robbie Ray. That being said, they didn't give Kershaw a qualifying offer. Who knows if Kershaw will be back as a Dodger. We have no idea what's happening with Trevor Bauer. So right now, he fits in as their number 3, kind of battling with Tony Gonsolin and David Price as the 4 or 5. That's not as stout. It's not as stout as a rotation, because Dustin May's not going to be back anytime this year, or maybe towards the end of the season or something. But you have to assume the Dodgers are going to make more moves, right?
Right, exactly. They're not going to settle for Heaney being different. Yeah. That's nasty.
So, I'm just going to say,
especially with that offense, there's no way.
8 seasons, he's only thrown over 130 innings one time. So, I mean, I mean, at best, he is just a guy who you can stream while he's healthy for a few starts, and that's assuming they fix him. So I don't know.
But if
I
they
get,
fix him, Dave.
yes, I know, Tony, and if Byron Buxton gets all of his joints replaced by advanced robotics that or whatever Wolverine uses, then yes, he'll be good too. But until those things happen and we live in a reality, it's not going to matter, and Heaney won't end up giving you value no matter how late you draft him.
I mean, I don't know about that. Like, I mean, if like Tony says, if he's going in like the 25th round, I'm going to take a dart throw.
It doesn't hurt at that point. I mean, you're taking all kinds of shots at that point. He's got the upside to justify that. It's just, I fully expect that if I take a dart throw at that point, I'm probably going to end up dropping him pretty quickly.
The problem is that these are the people these are the players that people fetishize. These are the players that people jump up multiple rounds to take because they keep saying, but if he stays healthy, if they fix him, if. So he's going to get overdrafted. I promise you.
I mean, he was healthy this year. He made 30 appearances.
He's on the Dodgers now, so he's
terrible.
Yeah, he was just bad. Let's move it on. Speaking of a guy who used to be bad, but actually had a decent season, Wade Miley got waived by the Reds.
Yeah.
Weirdly. And then the Cubs picked him up. Dave, what are your thoughts on Wade Miley going to Chicago?
Well, so the next news item kind of goes hand in hand with this. I think the Reds feel they have a lot of other options, I guess, which is why they're letting him go. And again, I don't know because it was the Reds, and we know, the Reds being driveline guys, having, had Bauer there before. They were probably using sticky substances. They were probably, doing something to help increase the spin rate and everything. Because like you said, Wade Miley went from being pretty bad to being really good this year, but he was pretty good in 2018 and 2019 as well. So, maybe he's not quite as bad. I mean, the underlying skills don't look good at all. And, he's painful to watch. Like you watch him and it looks like every pitch is going to be put into the bleachers, but I mean, he's finding a way to get by. So for the Cubs to pick him up, obviously they think that they're going to be competitive again. I don't know. We'll have to see what else they do this offseason, but I think he's.
I don't know that they're thinking they're going to be competitive. I think they see him as a $10 million soak up 200 innings kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Well, I don't know about 200 innings, but yeah.
Well, I mean, he stretched it out a little bit as the year went on. I mean, he's just because
coming off of 14 innings last year.
I mean, pitches.
I think 160 to 170 innings is a fair estimate. He hasn't really gone close to 200 since 2015, though.
I mean, he pitches the contact so much he can go deep in games. So I think that's what your hope is there. But I mean, he's got to regress at some point. Like I don't think he's as good as he was this year. I know he was pitching with an injury at the back end of the year, and so that's why he was garbage. But you can't pitch to contact like he does and produce the way he does consistently. So I mean, I'm not super excited by him, but I mean, he's just kind of your classic innings eater guy.
Yeah, kind of boring, but does what he needs to do. So, like you said, this relates to the other news about the Reds, and that's that Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo are likely going to compete for rotation spots in 2022. Tony, you excited about either of these guys?
I mean, I think they're both interesting. Green is the most exciting just because of the stuff. It's just the Reds are in such a weird place. Like it's not like they weren't a contending team, and it's not like they don't have veterans on that team that are solid. It's just they're in cost cutting mode, and so I don't know if it's something where they think that those guys are necessarily ready. I mean, I know Green threw 100-something innings. Lodolo threw 50. I mean, it's not something where you're just like, yeah, these guys are definitely ready for their shot. I mean, they might be, but I think it's more a function of the fact that the Reds just can't justify that payroll they were running last year. And so is it something where those guys are ready? I think we'll see, but I think it's like the dumping of Miley is just just a money move. Honestly, I don't know that it's a baseball move indicating those guys are ready so much as it's just like, hey, we need to shed some cap.
What are your thoughts there, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the right take. I mean, they've got Castillo, Molly, Sonny Gray, and then beyond that they've got Vladimir Gutierrez and then Reaver San Martin, who actually looks pretty good in a couple starts down the stretch. So, you add in Hunter Green is obviously a little bit more ready than Lodolo at this point, I think. He pitched 65 innings in AAA last year, whereas Lodolo had pretty much just gotten to AAA for a couple starts by the end of the season. But they're both guys who have really good strikeout stuff, and both have pretty good control too. So I think just know that they need to allocate their money to other things or just cut their payroll in general. But I think it makes sense to me. I mean, Wade Miley is not some world beater, and the Reds know that despite how well he pitched this year. So I don't think it would be a big downgrade for them to replace him with a combination of some of these younger guys.
Yeah, I think there's a real shot that Hunter Green's up pretty early. I'm sure they'll play the service time games that every team plays, though. Who knows with the new CBA how that's going to work out once that gets figured out. But Hunter Green, I believe, has to be put on the 40-man, or he's subject to the Rule 5. So they're not going to let him be subject to the Rule 5. So he would likely, and Lodolo still can stay off of the 40-man. So I think Hunter Green will likely be up pretty quick, which makes him really, really intriguing. I just don't know. I know he's only a season removed from his Tommy John, maybe a season and a half. Like I don't know how much they're going to want to push him. I don't know that he's going to get enough innings to necessarily matter outside of on a per start basis. Maybe it becomes interesting, but I just don't know that he's going to rack up 130, 140 innings this year. So he did
pitch 106 last year between both levels in the minors. So I mean,
maybe he can get to 140.
Yeah, so. I think so. I think that's within reason. It is surprising given that he missed all of 2019 and 2020, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we don't know how much he actually missed in 2020. He's probably the alt-site pitching. So, that's, maybe he gets 130, 140. That would make him a pretty interesting kind of late-round gamble. I'll be interested to see with this kind of early news how much that affects his ADP, because I think this early news that he could be fighting for a rotation spot will definitely make people want to take the gamble a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. Well, that's all the news. I'm going to pass it over to Dave.
All right. So we are here with our friend with fantasy benefits, Tony DiVincenzo. So Tony, we're going to put the spotlight on you a little bit. So for those of you, Tony kind of got the intro earlier, but we've been friends for about 22 years or so now, which is really crazy to think that we've even known each other that long. But We didn't even like each other when we first met because Tony was a huge D-bag in high school for a while. I don't remember. I don't know if you do. Do you even remember how we became friends or why?
I think it was through Brad. Because I remember he was going over your house. So Brad's just a guy who we knew through high school, and he went over Dave's house or something. He's like, hey, I hung out with Brad then, so he's like, hey, going over Dave McDonald's house. Like, do you want to come? It's like, okay, I'm not doing anything else. So I went over there and then talked to Dave, and he found out that I'm actually pretty awesome and that he's the douchebag. So after that, it was smooth sailing.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure one of the things that we connected on early was sports. Like we both had we both loved Cleveland sports specifically, but also, sports in general and fantasy sports and everything like that. So why don't you let people know, how did you get your start in fantasy baseball? Like just in general.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, like the first league that I can remember being in was in grade school. I remember, and it was a league that I was sharing with some friends back then. And I knew so little about fantasy sports. I was just like, all right, like at that point you're picking like Sammy Sosa in the home run chase. I mean, it was very just like casual. Like I was a baseball fan, big Indians fan, but hadn't had any exposure there. And so that was really my first exposure fantasy baseball. I think the first league that I was in was like a sandbox.net league. That site's been dead for years.
Yeah, I remember that.
But so it's like getting the taste there, slowly like working my way through different leagues. So then as fantasy sports started to become more and more mainstream, like a lot of it was the internet made things easier to do. Because I know that like back in the day, it was a lot of like pen and paper. I remember when you started Budget Baseball, you had to mail things in every week, like just absolutely ridiculous. So with the internet, it made it easier to pick stuff up, and I just kind of grew it from there. So like I said, I remember Dave's Budget Baseball. He used to have to mail in his lineups, and then like I got into Budget Baseball once it was on the internet. Loved doing it. Had some good leagues. I think I placed in the overalls a couple times one of these years, and so it was something that was a lot of fun. And so that just kind of parlayed itself into NFBC when they decided to ruin the Budget Baseball game. So and Dave was always one step ahead of it anyway. It was just kind of bouncing along to whatever Dave was doing. So Dave was doing Budget Baseball, so did Budget Baseball, then he did NFBC. Saw that live. I did some of their like smaller drafts, but that's kind of the foray into it. I mean, I always did like neighborhood leagues and friendly leagues and all that, but in terms of like actual like competitive overall competition stuff, that's all Dave's influence. Watching him wipe out made me think that I could do better, so I had to try it.
When did this happen? When did I wipe out, you chump?
I'm just messing with you.
So what advice would you give someone who's looking to make the jump from being a casual player to kind of entering the high stakes realm?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really about being comfortable before I did it. I mean, I was slower than a lot of people. A lot of people just take the jump into the pool strategy. They just say, screw it, I'm going to buy the league. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, if you're a little more sensitive on the money, like what I did was I did NFBC satellites to get used to the format, because like 15 teamers are night and day from 12 teamers in terms of like how you would build the team, how you would manage your fab, how you would do like roster construction. And so I did satellites to get used to the format, and then I decided, hey, you know what, I'm gonna share a team, because at this point I feel good enough in 15s, but I still haven't done like a full high stakes thing. And so that's when I started splitting the main with Dave, and that was big, just in terms of understanding like what someone who's done it before would do, so that way I didn't have to deal with a lot of the growing pains that you might otherwise deal with jumping to the mains right away. So I mean, it's you were smart. You watched me do it. That's and right. Let me make the mistakes, and then you just capitalized on them and just came right in. But you were like, all right, well, I know what to do now. That's right. It's like, all right, Dave's finally polished as a high stakes player. Now I can go in and let him help me make some money. So it was good. I mean, it's like having that co-manager who understands what they're doing does help a lot. It does help the learning curve.
Sure. And so before you and I were partners, for those of you who don't know, as Tony just said, since 2019, he's been my main event, NFBC main event partner. But before you were officially my partner, you were, for like 10 years coming with me to Vegas and Chicago, and you were you were helping me in the draft. You were another set of eyes. I respected your opinion, and you would also keep track of all the players who were drafted and everything. So, we finished first in our main event leagues the first 2 years we partnered in 2019 and 2020, including 10th and 58th overall finishes. But then we finished third in our league this year, unfortunately, as we had two of the top 25 teams in our league. Where do you think we went wrong this year compared to the previous two?
I mean, if you look at it, it's really just that I would say mid of the top 10s. Like we strung some busts together, like Plesac, Robles, Hayes, like all. I mean, Hayes obviously got hurt, so there's nothing you can do about that. But I mean, if you look at like our top 15 picks, there were a lot of guys who underperformed. Like we had Savali, we had Urshela in the 11th, Santander in the 12th, the Christian Walker. I mean, like all those guys underperformed what we were expecting him to do. I mean, a lot of those guys, like especially Robles, like we were counting on Robles for his speed, got us absolutely nothing. We were counting on Santander for 30 bombs. I mean, he started hitting at the end of the season, but it's like after we dumpstered him in a league. So it's just something where when you miss on that many early picks, like I feel like we had a lot of good players in value just out of the free agent pool, but it's hard, like especially with Plesac when you were counting on him to be like your number 2 guy, an upside pick, and he just fell flat on his face. Like that's something that's hard to overcome. I don't in our past drafts we didn't have that many mistakes. Like I know in the year we went top 10, the biggest mistake was Wade Davis, and he was like the 8th round pick or something. Other than that, we got production out of everybody. So it's like losing that much production early is tough to overcome.
Yeah, I think a lot of the misses just had to do with the fact that we did not properly account for coming off of the short season, going into a full season. You know, like I know I've listened to Phil and other people talk about it, and the way that they approached it, I think was the right way, and I just don't think we did. I think coming off of a full season, I think we're gonna using StatCast a lot more now moving forward, I think will be big for us as well, because we really didn't incorporate enough, because otherwise we would have avoided guys like Robles, right? Because like he was like a StatCast disaster. We were kind of convinced that his pedigree and they just put him up to the leadoff spot, and that I think overly influenced us, but we didn't like really consider the skills enough. We just kind of so in love with the role of leading off for the Nationals, hitting in front of Juan Soto, that I think we were just like, it was like an 8th round pick or whatever, but it was just a total flop.
He was a 6th round pick, Dave.
Oh, 6th. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, so and that's the whole thing, is that you can yeah, exactly. It's like you can take guys with a pedigree, and you can take guys who are projection, and have it be okay, like have it be a reasonable risk. But when you're taking a guy in the 6th round, and part of it is because of that damn draft slot, like 15th was just such a fucking hard place to draft from. I mean, this is the worst year for that too. No, like up until the point where we got that spot, because it was dead last in our KDS. Like it was dead last in my solo KDS. I did not prep from 15 at all. And so it's like, oh shit. Like, okay, now we've got this garbage draft spot that nobody wants. Like clearly when you're getting your dead last in KDS, it's a slot nobody wants. So it's like, all right, now we have to figure out how to draft it. It's like you're drafting from that slot. And so you didn't have a chance to say, hey, you know what, we're going to try to get value in Robles and let him fall back to a better value. It's, hey, you know what, we're just going to have to take the guys that we like. And when you do that and you have a guy like Robles who just falls on his face, I mean, in hindsight, what you would do is, and I mean, we've said this before, we went away from it in the main. I think that's part of the issue, is you're not going to win your draft in the early rounds, but you can absolutely lose it. Like if you have some guy who just blows up in the early rounds, that's really not going to carry your team if you miss on a lot of other picks. But if you've got a guy like Robles where you take him as a projection guy, because I mean, even the year before he sucked, like he hit what, like 200 something, like low 200s. And so you're projecting him to do a 30 steal season and score a ton of runs at the top of that lineup. He busts, and now you're chasing those stats the rest of the year. I think it's more, and we did this better in prior years, is you take more stable profiles. You take guys who, like, yeah, they might not have the ceiling of a Robles, but you feel a lot more confident in what you're going to get from those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely moving away from that in the future. I think that was more or less just a one-off, and especially like you said, given that we were drafting from the 15 spot, when you're drafting on either end, you kind of have to play the get your guys game. Like you can't assume anybody's going to make it all the way back to you 30 picks later. So if they're anywhere within that realm and you feel like they're someone you need to have on your team, you need to just take them then. So I think that was not where we wanted to be taking a guy like Robles anyways, but kind of felt like we had to, given what we were lacking on our team at the time. Although, just looking back on it and looking at all the guys we passed on, it hurts, obviously. But, hindsight's 20/20. You can always look back at that stuff and be like,
yeah, exactly.
So, not many people can successfully partner with someone else in fantasy baseball, as we kind of saw in our tag team league this year. A lot of people complaining about their partners. Now, Justin, I hear that you and Shelly had a very good working relationship, though.
Yeah, I actually really liked working with Shelly. I'm trying to cut down on leagues right now. Like I have a bet with Rob Silver that I will not The over-under is 17 and a half leagues. After doing 29
Dude,
last year. And so...
how many of those were fab?
Probably 12 or 13.
Oh my god, dude, why?
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
So
Oh, that's pain.
I'm actually up right now. I've got my list of leagues that I'm planning on doing this season, and right now the tag team isn't on that list. But hanging out with Shelly at for a little bit at First Pitch Arizona, I told her, I was like, listen, if you want to do the tag team league again, I had such a good time and enjoyed doing it that I would totally do it with you again. So that may end up happening, and then I just have to cut a different league in order to keep it under that 17.5 mark, because I'm not losing that bet to Rob. Like I have not joined. I've not joined a draft since doing the FPAS draft, and it is killing me. But I like winning bets. I don't like losing. I'm doing my best not to.
I mean, and this is a bet that is 100% under your control, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like this isn't something
Absolutely.
that like
It's a free
this
win
isn't
for
betting
you.
on a player's skills or anything. Like this is a free bet for you, so you should be able to. You should be able to win this one. But I know how tough it is for you to not enter leagues. Whereas with Tony and I, we don't even like think about entering leagues until like I don't even know, February maybe. I mean maybe January at the earliest. But like honestly, we hated doing the tag team draft as early as we did it. But
that one
anyways,
wasn't super early. It was like late February, right? So
I mean,
I think it was like early February.
It was early for us. Did you see our closers? It was early for us.
Oh, I mean,
the struggle is real.
Everybody struggled with closer in that league. I mean, it was ridiculous. But I mean, Tony, you gotta tell me, because working with Dave now on a weekly basis is infuriating enough. Like, how do you work through an entire baseball season on a day-to-day basis with this guy?
No, it's fantastic. It's wonderful. No, I mean I think a lot of it, like when you partner with somebody, like to share a team, you have to be flexible. Like if you're somebody who is very set in their ways and you have like your guys and that's it, like you can't possibly think of building a team around someone else's players, or even guys who, because I mean there's guys who are my guys, but it's something where could I build a roster where I legitimately don't take my guys and still pick to place in stats? Sure. And so when you're sharing a team with somebody, I mean, Dave has his guys for sure, and depending on the picks, he'll be a little hard to pull off of a guy here and there, but he's flexible too. And it's something where when there isn't as strong of a feeling, we just kind of work together and feel it out. Or if I'm in a draft and I'm running the sheet and I say, hey, you know what, we're short on speed, we need to figure it out. Like, here's some options. And he says, I like this guy and this guy. Then you just kind of go with that and you make it work. So it's so long as you're open-minded about how you draft and you're flexible, you can do it. The only way that you can't share a team is if you're just a stubborn bastard and you're like Jake and you're just like, I can't do it. I can't share a team. And I can't listen to anyone else. And I know everything. And at that point, you're just going to be drafting for yourself and you're going to piss each other off. So it's probably best to split up. But even he could work with a partner. I don't think he's as stubborn as he thinks he is.
He and Dave worked on the Battle of the Podcast team together.
But we didn't really have to do like fab together or anything. It was literally just set a lineup every week after the draft. And the draft was a slow draft. It was super early and neither of us were ready for it. So there's a lot of extenuating circumstances.
Doing fab with Jake would be an absolute fucking nightmare.
No, you couldn't.
You have no idea.
If you were on his softball team in the dugout, you might be able to do it with him, but other than that, it's game over.
You'd be like chasing him around first as he trotted to second on a double, like asking him, like, hey, can we like bump this player up a little bit in terms of bids? And how do you guys do fab together? Like, do you guys have like a set time and day? Like, are you Sunday at 3:00, like sitting down and having an hour-long conversation, or is it like an evolving process throughout the week? Like, hey, I added this guy on the thing. What do you think? You know, or like how does your guys' process work together?
So we did it a little different this year. We had a group sheet that we were kind of adding players to throughout the week. Generally, well, when I do my fab is more preparatory throughout the week. Like if I see a guy, like if I see something develop that it's like, hey, you know what, I want to, like this is actionable to fab, I'll just throw them on the sheet. It's like, hey, you know what, if I'm going through lineups and I say, hey, this guy's started the last 4 games while this guy's out, like he's probably a good pickup based on the schedule. So I'll go through and I'll make updates to that sheet. But I don't do as much of the prep on Sunday because a lot of my thinking is just kind of done throughout the week as we go. I feel like Dave is more of a Sunday guy where he really just goes hard at it. And so the sheet will be populated like 90% by like me and Marcus leading into Sunday. And then as soon as Dave hits it on Sunday, it's like he just does a straight dump of every single guy he's found. And I mean, he does a ton of work on it, and he finds a lot of good guys that we're not necessarily thinking of. And then it's just a matter of like, okay, where are we going to go from here? So like, we know what our needs are. We know the guys we like. Usually we end up on the same players. Sometimes we find a guy that the other guy isn't thinking of and we point him out. But a lot of it is just doing that groundwork and then saying, okay, what do we actually need to do? Like I like to prep my fab by saying like, okay, who is droppable on my team? Like this guy's a maybe, this guy's a definite. And then like, okay, what do we need to do if we drop these definite guys? Like, what do we need to fill? Like, what does our lineup look like? And so I think fab with Dave is easy. Like, honestly, I've told him before, but I think fab is one of his bigger strengths just because he always is diving so deep into it that he's coming up with guys. And really that's where you get the edge in 15 teamers is you're picking guys up ahead of the articles that come out or ahead of the guys who like, oh yeah, he had a great week. It's like, yeah, I know, I picked him up last week and I ran with it. And I think he does that really well.
Thank you. I mean, when you have as many draft busts as we had this year, you kind of have to. Otherwise,
you got to work at it. Yeah.
I'm not going to lose money, so you got to put in the work. You know, when you auto pick Cody Bellinger in the second round in Super League, the only way you're going to make money is if you grind it out every single week, and that's what I got to do. But you mentioned, so first of all, it's such so much of an edge to have 3 sets of eyes. It would be nice if Jake would try a 4th, but that didn't happen this year. But it's so nice to have 3 sets.
Pretty rare.
It's so nice to have 3 sets of eyes between me, you, and Marcus, so that if one of us misses something, that hopefully one of the others of us catches it. And we did a pretty good job keeping up that that list that we had every week. And then Tony and I would have usually, I don't know, an hour and a half conversation every Sunday night before fab, like around 8:30, 9 o'clock, because we had the main event and then we had the tag team. So we had 2 leagues that we had to go over our bids. Before that, Tony would go over his bids with our other friend and consortium member, Marcus. And, Tony, it's really impressive that you not only partner with me, but you also partner with Marcus as well. Even though Jake is the one amongst us who needs to partner the most, but, maybe you convince him this year.
Yeah,
but
right.
What aspects of your personality and your game help you accommodate working with someone? Do you think you can work well and have success with most people, or do you just, select few close friends?
I think so. I mean, so long as I have confidence in who they are as a player, because that's a lot of it is when you
mutual
are,
effects. Yeah,
you have to be willing to take the back seat on something. Because I mean, if you go in there and you're kind of sold on a guy and your partner says like, hey, you know what, I got a lot of conviction here. Like you have to be willing to say like, okay, I trust your research, I trust what you're saying, and just go with it. I mean, Marcus is like it's like sharing a team with me. Like he just doesn't. I've never fought with him on anything. It's really something where if we have a strong opinion, the other one just relents, and then we just kind of go with it. Like I said, you're more opinionated than Marcus for sure, but it's still I think it's easy enough to work with you because we talk a lot during the off season too. So we're on a lot of the same guys, and so it's not something where we're just like drafting out of left field. I really think that it would have to be somebody who just was philosophically opposed, like somebody who took a lot of injury risk, somebody who just gambled on guys in the early rounds. It would be a struggle to draft with them. I mean, I could, like, I feel comfortable enough working with anybody and building a team around it.
We'll put you with Siege next year. See how that works.
I mean, sure, why not?
Hater and Mondesi back to back in the first and second round turn.
Yeah. I mean, that's
I think like a fun, like I'm not saying we should do it this year or anything, but like we should one year think
Oh
about
God, I know what he's gonna say.
like everybody puts their name in the hat. You pick your
Oh,
partner, and
man.
then everybody puts their name in the hat, and then you draw who your partner is.
Oh God.
So
I mean,
it's
that could be a little
random.
intense.
Oh God.
Yeah, the Mondesi
For actual money, I don't know about that, man.
Yeah, if it's not for money, then are you gonna really like?
Yeah,
hey, you
no,
know what?
it
I need
would have to be for
I need
money.
to bail my ass out from drafting Mondesi in the second. Now you're just gonna fucking give up on it. So, like at that point, it's not gonna happen. So I mean, honestly, like if it was that like diametrically opposed to what I want to do, I'm just kind of writing it off. But I could build a team around Mondesi. I just wouldn't have any confidence that would make it past week 2 to actually be healthy. So
Right.
I make that suggestion, even though I would fucking hate that.
Oh,
there's
yeah,
a
I
lot
was
of
gonna
people
say-
that would hate it.
Yeah.
This. I don't know that this is going to get a lot of traction because I don't know too many people who are going to be into this idea.
Yeah, it's going to be like a 3-team league. It's going to suck. So yeah.
All right, so
Yeah,
Tony,
top 3.
you recently decided after 12 years of watching and occasionally partnering with me and Marcus to finally do your own main event team and start playing in some higher stakes yourself. Now, granted, you still played in. I mean, depending on your definition of high stakes, you played in leagues that were $100 entry fee. I don't know if you ever did anything that was in the thousands before the main event. Did you?
No, I mean this is my first league in the thousands. I've done hundos, like
Right.
I've done online championships and satellites, but like before the main in 2019, that's really the first like high stakes league that I did.
And you didn't do any of the were they the live double plays that were like $750 or whatever that they used to do?
I thought about it one year and then they killed him the next, so no, I never did
Okay.
that. Yeah, the first
Okay.
live draft I did. I mean, aside from like sitting in with you on the mains, but obviously you had final say of everyone. The first
Right.
actual like main that I had ownership stake in was 2019
With me, yeah, okay.
with you.
So what was the impetus for you to finally make the jump and have your own solo main event team? And how did you do it?
I can answer this. He saw me, and
I
he
wanted
went,
to take down
"I'm
Justin.
taking down Justin because we were in
Exactly.
the league together.
I was like, oh man, it's Justin, it's Toby, like this is gonna be fun. And then I went to the draft and I drafted Trevor Rosenthal, and it was not so fun anymore.
That was a tough fucking league. You, me, Toby,
Dude.
John Fish, John Posma, Joe Anthony won the league.
Oh.
Like it was
Mhm.
a tough fucking league.
It was brutal, man. Like I mean, my team finished top 50 and I got third. So it's there's not a whole lot you can do. It was a like Mitzif crushed it. Like that was a tough league. But I mean, it was really just something where like I had done the other leagues before. I mean, Fantrax I roll every single year. That's just solely to build my bankroll. Like satellites. I mean, the satellites are fun, and there's certainly a challenge to them depending on who's in the league. But it's not the same level of like the main. And like they've talked shit all the time. It's like, oh yeah, you won your satellite, but you've never won a main before. It's like, okay, well, I'll share a main with you. And that dude, you used to do that all the time when I didn't do it. It's because you wanted me to play. You wanted me to play.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We just want you to play. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
'Cause I
So
mean,
it's like,
I've been telling you for years that you're good enough to win, and you were very like hesitant. And it's not. So everybody has to understand, Tony is much more in a much better financial
risk-averse.
situation to be putting thousands of dollars into leagues than I am. So I'm like, why are you playing? Like you're good enough.
it's just
Um,
risk
you're-
aversion.
Right. Yeah.
That's all. I mean,
But I'm like, you've got the skill. You gotta do it at some point. I'm glad you finally did it this year. But you mentioned some of your other leagues like Fantrax and everything. When you're choosing your leagues, do you have a process you stick to in terms of like, I'm not going to do more in this many leagues, or a number of fab leagues that you're willing to do, or 12, 15 team leagues, or are there any like, do you refuse to do 10 team leagues? Like, how do you kind of choose what leagues you're going to do every year?
yeah, 10-team leagues are dead. That's a waste. Everyone's got a good team. There's no edge. I mean, I think 15 teams give you the biggest edge if you know what you're doing, just because of how deep they are. But I do 12s. I do Fantrax. Like I said, honestly, that's just to build bankroll. Like I've done those for either 3 or 4 years, and I've made pretty nice profit in every single year I've done them. And so those it's just like you keep your skills sharp. I mean, I don't even do any specific research for them. I just kind of do the research for the 15s and let it pour into the 12s and just kind of kind of manage it off of that. But I mean, in terms of how I picked the 15s, like I took this main this year because it was after Vegas. So I've said this on High Stakes Heat before, but I feel like I get better the more information I have. So the closer we get to draft day, and situations are actually, like, I'm not guessing as much. Situations get resolved. You're able to do more research. You're able to gather more information. I mean, even like seeing the early ADPs to say, like, okay, this is what people are actually doing, not like, hey, this is what they did in a $25 draft champion league or whatever. This is what they're doing when real money's on the line. I feel like that helps, but I did it because it was legitimately it was drafted the night before the baseball season started, because one of the reasons why I draft late is because I fucking hate injury issues that pop up for no reason after you draft. And I took Trevor Rosenthal and I got 0 innings out of him, and it was terrible. But in theory, that's how I do it. Okay. I'm not like specifically targeting like, hey, I'm gonna go up against these people. Like I like it when there's people that I know in the league. Just because I think it's more fun. Like, you get more banter that way, but it's like, I mean, there's always guys whose leagues you're gonna avoid. Like, I'm not gonna join any of Phil's leagues just in case system is gonna roll us for the next decade. Like,
he's gonna have the hardest time filling his own leagues.
Phil's gonna be in a lot of one-man leagues that close out. It's gonna be very sad for him.
Phil's gonna sign up for a league, and like everybody's gonna leave it. Like,
he's just gonna dry his tears with his money, Canadian dollars. Very sad, but he'll be all right.
I don't know, man. I've heard a lot of people who still
there's people who want to take
like. There's people who want to take him down, but there's also a lot of people who think that, you know, he didn't deal with a lot of injuries this year and stuff like that. You know, obviously, I don't think he's
like that design. Like, he did that by design. Like, some of it's luck for sure, but like
some of it's luck, but a lot of that is
you don't dominate the way Phil dominated this year without it being 90% skill. This is the same argument, and I think I made this argument, Dave. You were there in First Pitch Arizona. There's a reason why, like, final tables in poker have the same fucking guys at it all the time. Yes, is there luck involved? Absolutely. Did Phil have like run unbelievably well this year? Absolutely. But like, he also put himself in the position to run well.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like his rosters, like his early roster construction, there was a lot of variance in some of those teams, and it's just he was able to construct a team well. He was able to hit on the late guys, and the late guys are kind of where
that was the big thing for him.
He targeted the same dudes, but it's like that's skill. Like, that's not something where like, hey, you got lucky here. It's like, no, he hit on like every single one of his late pitchers. I mean, when you barely have to string pitchers because your rotation is insanely deep because you hit on everybody, like, that's skill.
Absolutely. I was just saying, there are some people out there think that. I'm not one of them. Like, I mean, I've been friends with Phil since 2019, and he finished like one spot ahead of us, I think, in the 2019 or 2. I can't remember which, but it was him and Toby.
It was 2019.
Right,
he finished 9th, and we were 10th.
Okay, yeah. So they were like I really went ahead of us in the last day. It was fucking terrible. We had 3 people pass us in the last day of the season. Clay Buckles cost us all that money. I remember. But anyways, I've known Phil's been a good. Like, I've known that this kind of year was coming for him for a while, because, like, I mean, I talk to him all the time. He's brilliant, and I know his processes, and it's very solid. There are some ways to improve on it that I can see, but it doesn't mean that he's not going to be just a fucking stud player. So no, you never want to enter a league with that. Toby's a great player too. You don't want to enter a league with those kind of guys if you can avoid it. But at the same time, sometimes you can't avoid it. So you just kind of gotta do what you gotta do, and can choose which leagues you enter. But at some point, and when you're playing live NFBC leagues, every league is full of sharks, right? Like,
especially mains.
Especially the main event. But like, the supers, the ultimates, all those things. Like, you're not going to get into any of those leagues and have a bunch of fish. Like, it just doesn't happen. If you want the easiest shot at a main event title, you got to do online, because there's usually, but as you guys know, not always.
Our league was online.
Usually they're softer in the live leagues, but because everybody who's hardcore is going and drafting in person. Now, if you really want to do it right, you do the online leagues while at the exact same time that everybody else is doing the live event drafts, which you get that Saturday morning, I think it is. at 10 a.m. or whatever that we're all doing. So you want to do an online draft at that time, assuming you don't want to do a live draft. That's probably the softest way to do a main event. But part of the fun is going there and hanging out and seeing everybody. Like we will keep going and doing it live every year we possibly can, because it's just
absolutely,
it's just so much more fun. But yeah, so how did you do in your leagues in 2020? Because I know that your solo main actually ended up finishing higher in the overall than your main with me and with Marcus, but I don't think you ended up cashing in your league, right?
I cashed in solo main.
You
solo
did.
main,
You got third. Okay.
Yeah, I got third.
Good.
That one finished in the top. I think it was like 49th overall, but like obviously, yeah. But again, when you've got two guys at the top of your league that just roll it, then you just kind of. I mean, honestly, at that point, there was a point in the season where I just said that I have an outside shot at getting second or first. I want to at least get my money back, and that's when I punted saves. I'm just like, I can't. I mean, I got just straight blasted trying to stream these garbage ass relievers, getting like 3 saves. I think I was 6 saves on the year, like absolutely pathetic. All these guys I played just torched my ratios, and so at some point I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm not gonna like the overall's not in the cards for me. I just need to try to cash, see if I can. I mean, there was a path for me to get second. First would have been super hard, getting a 1 in a category, but it's like I cashed there. So I mean, it's got my money back, learned a lesson, which. I mean, it's a little frustrating, but I mean, because both our main and that main got third, so it's like, yeah, you're getting your money back, but you're not really making anything.
That's better than both of my mains. I ended up in that main with you, and then I ended up in Phil's third place overall team main.
Pulling out,
and I was just shooting for third place the entire year and fell short. So.
Consider yourself lucky you didn't get into his first overall main,
he was so far away, or he was so far away, like winning that league by like the word go. Like it just was like just chasing. And I think in that league also, like there was a guy who finished in the top 10 in the overall as well. Like it was just insane.
Yeah. I mean, so it's like in those leagues, what can you do? Like you get your money back.
No, nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like we finished 4th, which sucks. Right. Like we were just out of the money because our team just imploded at the end.
Tyler Anderson. Enough said.
Yeah, Tyler Anderson sucked. It's like the 4T. I think we finished 5th or 6th.
And your 4T is your main event.
That's my other main that I split with Marcus. We were in contention for a while. That team crapped the bed at the end. So honestly, I think I was a little down in NFBC, but then Fantrax, I had 5 leagues and I had 3 firsts, a second, and a 4th. So like my net was like $2,000. So that's how I can justify just throwing money at this every year. I don't have to tell Rachel about it anymore because I've got such a bankroll built that I just play with it every year. But I think I've cashed at least $2,000 every year. So, I mean, it's in the end, like you're still making money, but it's not satisfying. Like when your biggest leagues, right. you finish third and it's like, oh man, like I wasn't even like the thrill of the overall chase like we had 2 years ago, or even last year once like, hey, you know what, we pulled out first place on the last day and it was intense. This year it was just pure pain, like trying to slog through and get to the end of it, knowing that I was going to make money.
We knew that we were in third. Like we knew we weren't going to be able to get to second, and we pretty much knew 4th wasn't going to be able to catch us. We were just like, hey, well, third it is.
Yeah, it's like, hey, league's over. Okay, nice. Got our money back. Hooray.
Yeah, exactly. So if you had a losing season, you had to take new money out of your bank account. Do you think your wife would still be on board with this?
I mean, I'd have to have a few losing seasons at this point to have to fund it, but I think she'd be okay with it. I mean, again, it's something where I feel like if you play it over the long haul and you're a solid player, you can generally at least break even. I would hope.
For sure.
So that's kind of the way I look at it. So, I mean, but I can justify it. I mean, if I just got absolutely whacked one year and I spent way too much money, I might scale it back the next year, but I'll probably do a similar amount of leagues. I did 4 fab leagues. 4 fab leagues is hell. I don't know how the hell you did 12. I would just like Sunday would just be a day of mourning for me. I want nothing to do with it.
It won't be 12. I think right now at the moment I'm scheduled for 4 Fab Leagues.
That's
Okay.
4 is my limit. I said 3 is ideal, 2 is even better, but 4 is like my cap, because it's just, I mean, especially at the end of the year, it's like you've done Fab every single week for how many weeks now? It's like, man, I don't want to do Fab anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially in those leagues where it's like, all right, I'm not really competing for any like big prize or big money. Like, Fab at the end of the year gets to be a grind. So I limit the amount of Fab leagues I do. But like Fantrax, like I said, I half pay attention to those leagues, so it's easier to manage those.
So Tony, tell me a little bit about your process. Like, what do you do every year to prepare? Like, do you feel like your process is the same every year, still evolving? What more can you do to get better?
Yeah, I mean, my process, I want to change not necessarily my draft process, but my in-season process this year. Like my draft process, so at the end of every year, I will just write down thoughts while they're fresh. So it's like any kind of learnings that I had, like any kind of feelings that I had in the season. I'll just write notes to myself. I'll write players that I feel like, hey, you know what? Like this guy turned it on at the back end of the year, but the stats aren't going to show it because it was such a small sampling. If there's a bunch of guys who's like, yeah, this guy had a shitty year, but I bet you this guy bounces back next year. Like I'll write all that stuff down, so that way when I inevitably take my mental break, play some fantasy football, I can come back to it and actually remember what I was doing. But before, usually my process starts after the Super Bowl, but this year, because the third place has left such a bad taste in my mouth, I want to start it sooner than that. But I will go through every drafted player in a main and at least like look into them and write some kind of note about them, just because. And that's like a learning from 3 years ago, where it's like there were like 2 or 3 guys that I just like they got taken in mains. I'm like, why the hell is this guy going? And I hadn't looked into him, and they actually ended up returning some value. So it's like, I'm never letting that happen again. So I will write a blurb or at least look into every single player. And it helps too, because when I actually go back and I try to do my post-mortem, I can look and say, what were my notes on these guys? Like, how many of these guys who broke out did I actually hit on? Why did I hit on the guys that I hit on? Why did I miss on the guys that I was out on that actually broke out? Like, is there something I need to adjust? So it gives me a really, really nice frame of reference. Like, this is where my mind was at into the draft. This is where my mind is at now. What has changed? What can I learn? And then other than that, I mean, my first drafts, I usually don't start drafting until March. When I draft in February, there's so many stupid injury issues, or like there's some dude who wins a job outright. It's like, well, if I would have known that, I would have taken him higher. And I get that like the itch is there to draft, but the managing of a team that I draft in February and probably blows ass is not. And so I will wait until March just for my own sanity and to make myself a little bit more successful. Because like I said, it's a rough going if I draft too early and I haven't finished my prep.
Right. And you've got some mad Excel skills, and you've actually created this super in-depth draft spreadsheet for all us to, well, for me, you, Jake, and Marcus to use. So how did you come up with that, and what have you added over the years, and are you looking to add anything new this year?
I mean, it's really just like an aggregation of everything that I want in a draft. I know there's sites out there that offer similar stuff, but it being in Excel, I can kind of customize it to do what I want to do. So essentially, I can just enter players in on the draft board. It'll mark them off on an ADP sheet. Like I have an overall ADP sheet. I have a positional ADP sheet. It marks both of those off for me. It will fill out my team roster. It'll fill out the other team's roster. It'll do projections, I can put in whatever projections I want. And so like I can just import the projections off Fangraphs, or like if there's a different site, like I know you like to use Chandler's projections just to see what they think of the roster. And so I'll put those in there. Like I can kind of customize it in Excel, do whatever I want. It's just a tool. It's something that makes it so that I'm not shuffling a ton of paper. Like I love like marking off on sheets, but I really suck when it gets to like pick 100, and I'm still trying to mark off on sheets, and I lose track of where guys are, and then I get behind, and then all I'm focusing on is where the fuck is this guy? I need to mark him off so that I don't accidentally draft him, and then I'm not thinking about my pick. So it lets me kind of just focus on what I need to do in the draft, kind of like draft software would do, but like I said, it's customized to what I need. If I could add something, I mean, like maybe a utility that'll pop up, aside from like a filter, like something that'll actually say like, hey, these are the top guys and all the different categories that you need. But really, I need something that manages in season, because like that sheet is very oriented to the drafts, and that's it.
Right.
I need something.
And that's kind of what I hope we can work on this offseason, because I have a lot of things that I would like to incorporate into something for in season, because obviously we don't have the ability like Phil to create a model in an Excel spreadsheet, but we do have the ability to do some scraping and kind of bring in the data and then just kind of refresh it whenever we need to see the current stats for everybody. I think that would help a lot. Yeah,
I mean, if I could just learn to do regressions, then we could at least incorporate some of that. But I mean, I haven't taken a stats class since I was in college, so it's like at this
don't you do modeling don't you do modeling for a bank? Isn't that your whole job?
No, I do capital planning. That has absolutely nothing to do with modeling. I use the modeling from another team. There's the guys I work with who could model, but so I mean, you can make something, right? At the very least, I'm going to create some kind of tool. It's just how dumb is it? Like, is it going to be something that is as smart as system, where it just like tells you how to be awesome, or is it something where it's just a tool that we can use so that we don't have to surf through like 57 different pages of free agents and try to like mark guys on our watch list? Instead, it just kind of says like, hey, these are guys who you might want to pay attention to. But exactly. I don't know. It's going to take a while, so I have to think about it.
But it's something that you can put time in up front, and then it'll pay off by saving us time down the road, because there's way too much to do in season to constantly be looking up everything.
As much as I love counting down the time to 10 o'clock every week as we do Fab, I would like to not have to deal with that. So if we can avoid it, then all right.
Yeah, that would be nice, right? So, all right, let's end with a couple of fun questions. What's your favorite story from us going to live drafts in Chicago or Vegas over the last 14 years?
Oh man, I would say it was the draft where we got woken up by Bobby Journey. It's like, dude, you're on the clock and you need to pick because Greg's not waiting for you. And we go in a dead effing sprint from the Flamingo to the Bellagio. And this is like before draft sheets or anything. So like we had fucking pieces of paper, and they're just reading off names.
And this was our first year, I believe, in Vegas, right?
First year in
Vegas when we were in our mid-20s.
Hold on. So you're telling me that the fiasco from last year has happened?
That is not the first time. Oh yes.
So this wasn't like a one-time fuck up. There's a pattern here.
Oh, it is a pattern. Absolutely.
Yeah. This was actually this was on me though. This wasn't extenuating circumstances. This was me being 25 in Vegas for the first time. So
yeah, we went a little hard that first night. So
yeah,
it was easy to sleep in.
Yeah, we're sprinting across from the Flamingo to the Bellagio. Tony, I'm on the phone with Greg, who's sitting in for me during the draft because the draft still starts on time. And Greg is asking me for picks over the phone. Greg is not happy, by the way.
No, Greg was
He's
pissed.
like, who the fuck is – like, I'm the youngest guy in the room by 20 years. And he's like, who the fuck is this 25-year-old in my league? You know, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure that's what he's thinking. And so Tony's marking off all the names on the draft sheet. Like, we're going in the elevator, like, sprinting across. We probably got in like 10 minutes because we were, like, hauling ass. I mean, we sprinted. And this is, first draft doing live in Vegas. But it was continued from there.
Yeah, so I mean, like eventually we're hauling ass. We get to the Bellagio, land in the draft. I think at that point it was like the third or fourth round or whatever. Just like completely exhausted. Like Greg is just like gives us the death stare. Like clearly, it's just like, what the fuck are you guys doing? And then I think that ended up being a win in the league.
Yeah, I ended up winning the league
somehow. It was a slightly happier ending than the Super, but. Even the Super had a happy ending for how horrific that was.
I'll take doubling my money. I'm not super upset about it, but just
you're
the
not
whole way that went down was sucky. But
Yeah.
All right, so you know how Justin uses Mike Polk's hastily made Cleveland tourism videos as our opening for the show. What's your favorite Mike Polk video? Is it that? Is it the Factory of Sadness, Brown's video, the Holiday Girlfriend Contest, the Stupid Fucking Cat, the Ohio Secession Plan, Man in the Box series? He's got so many classics.
Yeah, it's the tourism video. Like, even when that was playing, like, I've seen that thing 100 times. Like, I can't tell. Like, being in Cincinnati, I cannot tell you how many times people are like, "Dude, have you seen the hastily made Cleveland tourism video?" Like, yes, I've seen it 100 times, and then they show it to me anyway, and I still laugh at it because it's hilarious. And it ages well too. Like, a lot of the commentary, I'm like, yeah, that's still pretty true. Like, okay, that's fair. Factory Sadness one is funny too, just because the Browns are a depressing franchise to root for, but I'm not anymore. Obviously, took down the Who days, but I mean, it's just that captured exactly how you're feeling at that point. It's like, God, this, like, I watched every single game of the 0-16 season. Like, I punish myself. Like, I can't help but watch the Browns games, and so. When you got somebody going out there just talking about how just absolutely miserable and pathetic it is. I think he was in a Pontbriand jersey too. It's like, okay, you're Pro Bowl long snapper. So that speaks right to the heart.
Pretty much says it all right there.
Yeah.
So you refuse to listen to yourself on podcasts because you've been on us with the High Stakes Heat a number of times. Why is that?
I don't like the sound of my own voice on podcasts. It's just weird. Like, it's weird hearing yourself. I've told you, this is not a me phenomenon. This is a lot of people. Like, Adam Driver will not watch his movies. Justin, you don't do it?
I don't listen to myself on podcasts.
Dave, you are outnumbered right now. There are two people on this pod who don't listen to themselves.
Yeah, I have been on thousands of podcasts, and I do not like. I mean, the only time I will do it is if something funny happened and I'm trying to show it to my wife. Like, that's I don't like editing my own podcasts, and as people who've listened to me for a very long time notice, I don't edit much because I don't want to have to listen back at myself. So no, I try.
That's why. Okay.
So you are outnumbered, Dave.
Yeah.
So why do you like to listen to yourself talk so much, Dave?
It's not liking to listen to yourself.
This is an ego thing right here.
It's an ego thing. No, I'm just kidding.
Get out of here. No, I'm just saying I can do it. I'm not saying I don't look to do it, but I
am just
do you
giving you
listen
shit.
to yourself to go to sleep? Like, do you put it on in the background?
The soothing sounds of Dave McDonald, the dulcet tones.
No, I think you guys both have great podcast voices. I mean, I think better than mine. So that's why it shocks me that you two are so averse to listening or to hearing yourself.
It's weird, man. I don't know.
I'm very, very critical of myself.
Yeah, that's probably
ditto.
And so
I think everybody.
When I hear myself, I nitpick myself, and I don't want to do that. And so, I mean,
it can also help you get better though, because I listened to myself the first time I was ever on with Bubba, and then I kind of made some mental notes like, okay, I need to not do that. I need to not do that. It helped me get better the next time I was on.
I would love to hear early episodes of Friends of Fantasy Benefits. I wish they still existed. I'm sure they're somewhere that I could probably dig them up if I really, really tried really hard.
Is that the first time you were ever on a podcast? Was Friends of Fantasy
Benefits? Yes, and it was fucking awful. I mean, I was truly atrocious at this. Like, if you heard the first few episodes of Friends of Fantasy Benefits, you would have been like, "Oh my god, this guy does not need a mic in front of him." It was
I have no problem believing that. I think that right now, so that's not shocking at all.
Yeah, So I mean, I would love to go back and listen just to see how bad it really was. 'Cause I know it was really, really bad.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so Tony, will Jake ever do another episode of High Stakes Heat? How do you feel about taking over as host?
I think yes, Jake will do another episode of High Stakes Heat. You're going to have to wait for the crypto bear market, but eventually, when crypto stops ripping, Jake will turn his attention to other things, and he'll record another episode. But the problem is that if you think about what Jake does a lot of the technical stuff. He does a lot of the editing. He does a lot of the ad stuff, which I have absolutely zero tolerance for. I can go on a pod unprepared and just blabber for like an hour or an hour and a half, like we're doing right now. But sitting down for an hour and a half and listening to my own voice, editing it, and trying to make it sound nice, nah. So I think you're stuck waiting for Ethereum to crash before you can get another taste of your high stakes heat.
Well, damn, I don't want that to happen.
He'll be back.
Yeah, supposedly this Thursday, but fool me once, fool me twice. Third time
I was about to say, yeah.
I know.
See, but this
is possible.
This is exactly why I started bringing guests on Friends Fantasy Benefits on a regular basis. So if my co-host bailed on me, I had someone to talk to.
Yeah,
fair.
There you go. But see, you got reliable Dave over here.
Yeah, now I got Dave, and I don't have to worry about it. So I will still be doing guests, but
for sure. Yeah. We're kind of at the point in the off season where I said to Justin, I was like, I think now would be a good time to start having guests on because we don't really have any actionable advice or to go on. Like we haven't started I haven't started my digging deep in yet. Like there's nothing going on now. The World Series just ended, so now is the perfect time to talk to people about 2021. How did you do, lessons learned and all that stuff. And I asked him who he wanted to bring on. He suggested you, and I said, sure, let's do it.
Good choice.
But it's interesting because Tony, you didn't come to First Pitch Arizona this year. Why do you hate Justin that much that you wouldn't come to First Pitch just because he's there?
I mean, every single year that I go to Vegas, I get stuck in a bed with Dave, and he snores, and I don't get to sleep. And now that I don't snore anymore, I just get woken up all night. I can't deal with that. If I'm going to go on vacation, I got to sleep. So Justin was the appeal. Like I'm like, man, I can go hang out with Justin, but I have to deal with Dave's ass. So
yeah. One of these years I'll make it out to Vegas. It won't be next year.
Oh, do it. Do it.
It's hard for me to go to New York and then the next week go to Vegas.
It's a slog.
Right.
But I've already talked to Danielle and told her, like, listen, I do want to do Vegas one year. So it'll happen at some point, but probably not in the near future. But yeah, I've also become this person as an adult. I'm an adult now. 30 gonna be 37 here in about 2 weeks. I refuse to share hotel rooms with people other than my wife. Like I'm sorry.
Man.
Like I will pay for my own hotel room just so I don't have to worry about sharing it with a buddy.
About Dave trying to spoon you in the middle of the night. Yeah, I understand.
Dave, I wouldn't mind so much. He's a big boy and gives good hugs.
It's a big warm teddy bear.
Oh God. Oh well, Tony, do you think you'd come to First Pitch next year though?
Possibly. I mean, the other part of it is that it's at a bad time for my work. So it's like, I mean, maybe I could make it work, but I'd kind of have to feel it out ahead of time. So I can't make any guarantees. Like even Vegas, like I take a day for Vegas and I make a long weekend out of it, but just the way that the calendar works out, like like Vegas is legitimately like the busiest time of my job, and so like I go out there because I don't have a choice. But it would be nice to be able to actually make a bigger trip out of it, like go out there like Dave does on a Wednesday or something, come back like after Sunday instead of the quick shot that I do. But I mean, it would be fun. Like I mean, I see all I get all the FOMO from Twitter when I see people posting shit and like they're like everyone's wasted, so they're all like, "I love you, man! Like you're the best, like, it's the greatest time ever." And like that, it does make me want to go out there and meet some of these people because it's a lot of good dudes out there. But it's hard for me to
a lot
swing
more
it
fun than I was expecting it to be fun. It was more fun than I was expecting it to be. It was really cool.
It's a blast.
To finally meet everybody that you've been talking to on Twitter for years and everything, and even people you hadn't really talked to before. You can really get a better idea of who people are. Like you read things on Twitter and you get an idea of who they are in your head, and it could be completely wrong. Like I get that a lot. People who are like, oh, the way you talk on Twitter, blah, 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 or whatever. And then they, meet you in person and it's like, oh, okay, now I get how you are. You're actually a good guy or whatever. So that happened a lot for people, and, I mean, Rob Silver came over to me and like cornered me one night, and he was just like, "Hey man, I just want you to know, like, I know I can come off like a dick online, but I just want to."
He's a really good dude.
Come over to you. He is a really good guy. He's intense. He is intense, but he's a really good guy. I like Rob, but it was really nice to have him come over, kind of tell me a little bit, about who he actually is, because you can't get a full picture just by how some tweets and stuff. So it was really cool to get that perspective. With the exception of Curland, I could have done without spending the weekend with Curland. That guy needs an off switch.
Yeah.
He's a nice, goofy dude, but my God, I need to be able to push that off switch, and he has none.
Yeah, some people have a different energy level than others. It's tough.
I have no idea how you guys all had a house together.
Oh my God,
that was a poor decision on all of your parts.
It was such a poor decision, and it was Simeone and like a California King. Simeone weighs like 104 pounds. So he could like roll over 7 times and not hit anybody else in the bed, but it was literally just him in bed by himself. And then it was George and Curlin snoring their asses off in the little private room, and then me sleeping out in like the main living room area on a couch that was supposedly a pull-out bed, but definitely was not a pull-out bed. So we'll definitely do better planning. Well, it was really cheap. It was like, I only had to pay like $100 for like 5 nights or 4 nights or whatever it was. So it was nice for that reason. And
yeah,
next
time take some of that NFBC winnings and be an adult and get your own hotel room. Yeah,
listen, I'm not gonna stay at the hotel for $400 a night. I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Maybe if you win the overall, Dave, how about that?
Yeah, wins $8,000 playing NFBC, won't spend $400.
That $400 is a league.
That's like $2,000
It was $150 a night.
Not when I looked. I don't know when you booked, but
you got to book and get the.
Your room was free, right?
Nope.
No.
I
Okay. Paul got the free room. I don't know how that worked.
Yeah. So somehow I didn't get the hookup, but if you book through their block of rooms, it's like $155 a night.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know about that.
Mm-hmm. See, there you go. Now you know. Next year, you won't have to cuddle with Curly.
I didn't mind the walk though. It was nice to walk around a bit and stay in the house and everything. We'll see what's available, but I'm not going to let Simeone play. Well, he might not. I don't know if he wants to do a group or anything, but I'll see what's available. But it was still a good time. Those guys were awesome.
I think he'll just be a little bit more judicious about who he invites to the group.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, with that, Tony, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. No, these things are always fun. I like just being able to talk baseball. Don't always. I mean, Twitter you get to pop back and forth, but like you're saying, it's nice to actually like talk to you guys in person and shoot the shit a little bit, especially in the off season when it's just like there's nothing going on. So it's a good excuse to jab a little bit.
Remind everybody where you can reach on social media real quick.
I am on Twitter at Spectre14, SPECTRE. And I mean, I'm on other social media, but I'm really boring there. I mean, on Twitter, I'm like
no TikTok.
No TikTok. I'm on Facebook, but no one wants to add me on Facebook because I don't do that. I mean, even on Twitter, I kind of post about Brown stuff like 90% of the time, but you might get a baseball insight here and there. I'll be nice to you. How about that?
There you go. That's good enough.
I won't be as abrasive as Dave.
Yeah, no. Don't follow Dave on Twitter at RunDMCD. Don't forget the D. Dave, what do you got going on?
Man, just trying to. I had a little bit of a COVID scare last week. I thought I might have caught it, but thankfully it looks like I have avoided it and was just like a regular. You got other illnesses in the world, and every time you have any kind of symptom, you're like, oh, I must have COVID. But someone I was with tested positive, and I was like, oh shit. So sick for a couple days, but I think it was just a standard variety cold flu because I tested negative. But while I was sick, just kept on writing, and Govie and I are scheduling a conversation for tomorrow to see talk about some possible future plans, and hopefully Tony and I work on our in-season stats spreadsheet to use this year, and it's pretty much what I'm working on.
Nice. You can reach me on Twitter at Justin Mason FWFB. Email me or the show, friendsoffantasybenefits at gmail.com. I'm releasing ranks right now on Fangraphs. We'll have some ADP stuff probably in the next week or
Don't
two.
forget to hit Justin up in the comments section of the Fangraph article.
Yes.
Love that.
Yes.
You got to be a little cheeky with him. He really wants you to
He loves being
to give him some shit.
trolled. He has specifically requested if you guys see any variation in, like, if you think I should be ranked second instead of third, make sure you tell him. He loves this kind of feedback.
You should really ask him if Ronald Acuna still plays the outfield.
Mm-hmm.
I think he really enjoys that question.
Yeah,
Ask him about Edison Cano.
Yep. Yeah. Feel free to nitpick ranks. Yeah. It's been a very fun comment section. People are bored in the off season apparently, and really hammering me for random ranks. But I think outfield went up today. Starting pitcher will go up tomorrow. That'll set the whole world on fire as I release my top probably 100 starters for 2022. So and then relief pitcher will be after that. So people will really go fucking crazy. So yeah, you can definitely catch all those. Have some cool things coming up this off season. But for Tony, Dave, and myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season. And this being the Cleveland podcast with two Cleveland guys, we have to end with
Fun times in Cleveland again. Still Cleveland. Come on down to Cleveland town, everyone. Under construction since 1868. See our river that catches on fire. It's so polluted that all our fish have AIDS. We see the sun almost 3 times a year. This guy has at least 2 DUIs. The flats look like a Scooby-Doo ghost town. Don't slow down in East Cleveland or you'll die. Our economy's based on LeBron James. Buy a house for the price of a VCR. Our main export is crippling depression. We're so retarded that we think this is art. It could be worse though, at least we're not Detroit. We're not